Yo, what's going on, Torah for Life fam? This is your man, Jonathan J. Immanuel, coming with our very first Bible study. And if you know anything about me, I don't like to study the Bible alone. Always like to have somebody along with me so we can toss ideas off of each other. This time around, I got none other than a very special guest joining me, my girl, Tara. What is going on with you?
What's poppin'? What's poppin'? It's crazy hearing Tara because normally,
I know. I should have been like, yo, Miss P, crazy. AKA Tara. See, I know you like that. The peoples may not know you like
exactly.
that. Right. So for the peoples that don't know.
For this Bible study, I want to be Tara.
Right, she's Tara for Bible study. But, Miss P for the family. Yes. What do they say? And I don't know if this is the right or wrong place to say this, but, it's Miss Jackson if she's nasty, right?
Exactly, right. Miss P is my stage name, all right?
You feel me? Yo, I am so super excited to have you come along on this journey with me for Torah for Life, this new ministry. One of the main things that we want to do here on this platform is share with people how they can take the things that they see in the Bible and apply it into their lives and their relationships in a practical way. So one of the first things that I wanted to do before we actually dive in and get into the word is go through a really quick kind of like slide presentation. And what it's going to do is pretty much introduce to you and everybody listening the way that we're going to be studying the Bible here on this channel. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring up the slides. So can you see it, how we study the Bible?
Oh, shoot. Look at you.
You see a little, you see a little. She like, oh, hold on, the boy got slides.
Okay.
It's coming through kind of clean.
He got the presentation.
He got the presentation like this is work, man. Don't forget, I was in corporate America. I know how to do a little something on the PowerPoint joint.
Well, got the skills.
I definitely got the skills. I got those. So first things first, I think the most important thing when studying the Bible is making sure that we lay the proper foundation. And one of the things that is the foundation to any Bible study is the Bible, right? It's the text that we're actually reading. So with that in mind, I want to ask you a question. Do you know what the original language that the Bible was written in?
I'm thinking Hebrew, but I don't know.
Okay, cool. And that's fine, because one of the things that I want to bring up is the fact that there is a difference between originals and translations. Now, I'll be completely honest. For a long time, I didn't know that. I really thought King James with the these and thous in the English was the original translation. It was
me too.
Years back that I recognized that, oh man, that's not the original language that the Bible was in. I'm just simply reading from a translation. So for anybody out there who may not know that, just wanted to drop that nugget and let them know that there is a difference between the original text and the translations that many of us are accustomed to reading. So without further ado, what I want to do is kind of take you and those who are watching through some of the most common biblical translations. But first, if you look at the top right side of the screen, you'll see that it actually gives us what you already stated, one of the original languages, which is Hebrew. But we also see that there's two other original languages, which are Aramaic and Greek. So as you may be familiar with, when you pick up your Bible, there's what is often termed the Old Testament and the New Testament, right? Right. So when you look at the Old Testament, or what some people may refer to as the Torah or the Tanakh, it is primarily written, as you mentioned, in the language of Hebrew. And there are some passages, primarily, I think, in the book of Ezra, and some passages, maybe even in Daniel, where you'll find Aramaic very sparsely as well. Now, when you turn over to the New Testament, that's where you're going to see the original text being written in the language of Greek. So for everybody out there watching, for you as well, Miss P, I want you guys to know that there are three primary languages that compose the original text of the Bible: Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. Now, when it comes to what we're all primarily familiar with, it's the translations. And we have to recognize that translations are not created equal. As you can probably see from the bottom part of that little slide, you see that spectrum?
Whoa.
Yeah, they're not equal, right? They all over the place. And if we don't know where they fit on the spectrum, we don't know exactly what we're receiving when we're reading certain translations. So before I start to dive into what each of those translations are, or whether they're better or worse, or whatever the case may be, let's talk about the two different approaches to how these translations are created. So there's the formal translation, and there's also what's known as the dynamic translation. Or as you can see right here, they break it down into word for word and thought for thought. So when you talk about a formal or a word for word translation, what it means is that when those translators sat down to put together your Bible in English, they wanted to look at those Hebrew manuscripts in the original or those Greek manuscripts in the original, and they wanted to match those original words with English words that were equivalent. So their whole purpose was to match word for word. They weren't really concerned with whether or not it made sense with regards to sentence structure, with regards to, the thought or the message that was being conveyed. It was more so about just making sure that what the original says, the English says that as closely as possible. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So then when we get to the second, which is the dynamic or the thought for thought approach, they take a very different approach. What they do is they say, hey, you know what? We understand that there's some original Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek words, and we could, do the due diligence of finding English words that fit them perfectly and arrange it in the same grammatical function. But we're not going to do that. We are more concerned with figuring out what was the original thought, what was the original message that the author or the writer was trying to convey. And we're going to arrange our English translation so that it makes sense to readers in English. So that is the primary difference between those two translations. And for some people, right, I know you and me, we know each other, Miss P, and you're like, okay, Jay, Jonathan, he told me this, so it makes sense. I believe him. But I'm of the sense everybody ain't going to believe what I'm saying, right? They might be like, yo, this dude just made this up. Where you get that slide from? He probably went to Google Images, which I did, and I found this to present it to y'all. I ain't going to lie. I'm honest with it. I did get it from Google Images. But as you can see from the slide itself, this is actually a graphic that was created from Bible Gateway. But for those people who don't believe me, I want to take you guys to a reputable source. Have you ever heard of Tyndale by any chance, Ms. B?
No.
Okay, so Tyndale is a Bible publisher. So they publish some of the most famous Bibles and even Christian literature and other religious literature or books that you may be familiar with. So what I want to do really quickly is just bring that up on the screen so you guys can see. So we're over here at Tyndale, and actually let me take us off the screen so we can just see this clearly. You see the website where it says the difference between literal and dynamic translations of the Bible? All right, so here we are at a reputable source. In case y'all don't believe Jonathan or Jay, y'all don't believe me, we're going to break it down right here on the site. It tells us that there are two dominant translation methodologies, like I was sharing with you guys, the formal equivalency and the dynamic equivalency. As it says in the formal equivalency translations, the translators attempt to translate each word in the original language into an equivalent English word. So that's the reason why they call it either formal or literal. Now, let me scroll down and show you guys what it says about the dynamic. So when you see it says here, the dynamic equivalency translations, the translator is attempting to translate the message or the meaning of the original language text into an equivalent English word expression. So that is what I just got through saying. But for those people who don't want to just believe it just because I said it, I thought it was important to take you guys to a reputable site by a reputable source, Tyndale, so you can see that what I'm saying is actually accurate information. Now, I'll make sure we get back on the screen so that everybody can see us. Here we are. Y'all see our smiling faces again? Wonderful. So what I wanted to add is that when you look at these two different approaches, right, neither of them are going to be perfect. So that doesn't mean that every word for word is not going to be exactly word for word like the original. And the thought for thought are not also going to have some places where the word for word is matching up. In fact, they both use a combination of both. It just leans a little bit heavier one way or the other. So with that being said, I'm curious, Ms. P, what is your favorite translation when you're reading the Bible?
I would say my approach is for sure thought for thought. And the best quote unquote Bible, I would say, that helped me the most was the Message.
Yeah.
For sure, because I like it all the way, like give it to me straight, no chaser. Well, actually, give me a little chaser, okay?
But want a little chase with it.
Give me a little chaser, but the word for word one, oh my God, I'm struggling, okay? But the thought for thought, I need you to break it all the way down for me, because I guess that's one of the main reasons why I go in and out with really dissecting the Bible is sometimes it's intimidating, especially the word for word Bibles. They're very intimidating for me. Now, some other people, they can get down with it, but for me, I'm like, whoa. Yeah. I need you to break it on down. That's how I learned, actually. I'm a very visual person. I love analogies. I love when you give me like a play-by-play, or even what we're doing right here, like really breaking it down and saying, okay, this is how you can apply it to your relationships or your friendships or shoot, anything, that helps me. Yeah, that helps me. But the word for word, just giving it to me and we just saying it in church, I'll be like, oh, okay, then that's nice. But it didn't resonate.
I can totally relate to you. And when I look back on my spiritual journey, one of the first translations that enabled me to read the Bible in its entirety was the Message Bible. Now, before I get into a little bit more details about, my journey and, how I kind of made my way from one end of that spectrum that we see on the screen to the other, I want to get your thoughts. Have you ever heard of people that would speak ill or negatively towards people who read a certain translation of the Bible versus another?
Not necessarily. I think for me, growing up with my spiritual journey, I would say as long as the Bible was just always referenced, right? But it was never like, oh my God, you have to read it in this translation or that's it. So I didn't have that thrown at me a lot. And I didn't even know that there were so many different translations until I started having that relationship for myself. And I wanted to really dissect the Bible. And even when we would do it, y'all, this isn't nothing new. We've been doing this for a while. Okay. Right. But even when we did, we would peel back the layers, but it would be very da-da-da. Right. As opposed to, okay, we're peeling this back. And what does that word mean? Like, it would be very in your face. But no, I never had anyone, for me personally, say, hey, if you don't read this translation, it's garbage. Like, no. And for me personally, I'd be like, excuse you? So yeah, that.
Like, check yourself.
Yeah, like, whoa. This is how I learned. Thank you very much. But no. Right. And I think that's very unfortunate if somebody really comes at you and be like, yo, that translation is whack sauce. Like, you ain't gonna learn nothing. You be like, excuse you? That's wow. Real. Yeah. Okay. Because I believe God speaks to us in different ways. He's not talking to you the same way he's talking to me. Like, no, our interpretations and relationships are different. So I don't even validate that if somebody's like, yo, that translation is whack. I'll be like, you're whack.
That's real.
Sorry,
and
but yeah.
The reason why I brought that up is because some people have experienced what you just mentioned, where somebody has given them the side eye or threw some shade their way because they were reading one translation versus another. And there are some people who ride hard, like, like they throwing up their set when it comes to, what translation they using. It's like, if you go against that, then, you ain't really bothered by it.
NIV, dog.
Bible knife, baby.
NIV. Yeah, I'm be like, whoa.
So I wanted to bring that up because I want to let all of the people know who are going to be studying with us here at Torah for Life that we're not sticklers for the translation. I'm all about you as an individual. If you make the decision that you want to study the Bible and you want to learn how to apply it in your life, I think you got to start at a place where it makes sense to you. I know me, I had to crawl before I could walk. And I promise you, I may have started with the Message Bible and made my way through that slowly over the years. And I promise you, I still go back to certain translations. I go from word to word. I go to the thought for thought, and I do it based on what I'm studying. So I just want you guys to know that you ain't gonna get no judgment over here based on what translation you use. And if you're watching this channel, you'll likely see us go to different translations. But now you'll be able to see that, hey, we want to look at something from a word for word. We want to look at something from a thought for thought, and you'll gain the understanding of why we're looking at things in different translations. So yeah, one of the things that I also wanted to point out is you see some of the more popular translations at the bottom. You got Message. I know a lot of people also like the Living Translation and the New Living Translation. As you can see, all of those take that thought for thought approach. So I can totally understand why that's very popular among a lot of people, because like you mentioned, it allows you to open up the Bible and not feel lost. Right.
Right. Exactly.
And we see right there in the middle, you got the NIV where, they're trying to ride that fine line of doing both. To the best of their ability. And then some of the other famous translations, like I said, the infamous King James, and then Mr. New King James is down there along with the ESV. And one of the things that you'll see us using throughout our studies is the interlinear, which you find all the way at the left side of your screen, all the way at the word for word. Now, I'm curious, do you know what an interlinear Bible is?
Have no clue.
Not a problem. So what the interlinear does is it actually takes an English translation and it brings up the Hebrew or the Aramaic or the Greek, whatever the original language is. It puts those words side by side so that you can analyze them. That's the reason why interlinear finds itself all the way at the end of the spectrum, because it will show you, hey, this is the original word and this is the word that we have in English. And you can compare the two and dive into a deeper study if you so choose to do so. So we'll definitely bring that up depending on certain things that come up if we want to dive a little bit deeper into the language. But with that being said, let me get to the next slide. So I'm curious. I got two words up, exegesis and eisegesis. By any chance, do you know what either of those words mean?
I feel like it has something to do with exercise, but I know that is not correct.
Yo, you're a real one.
So I'm going to go with no. And let me tell y'all something out here. I have no problem with saying I don't know something. I think that is something you have to, but used to, I was very much so like, I think it, now at this age, I'm like, no.
Right. And I love that. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because that's something else that I want people who will be studying with us here to know, is that no and I don't know are totally okay answers over here. I know in some places it's not. Some places you got to have an answer or, people going to look at you funny. Like not over here. If you don't know something, if you have questions, if the answer is no, then I'm all for it. It allows us to go deeper and actually teach you something new, and not in a way where it's like, oh man, you ain't know this, let me put you down. But like, nah, I want to actually build you up by bringing some new information that could assist you, especially when studying and applying the Bible in your life. So I appreciate you for saying, hey, you know what? I don't know what exegesis and eisegesis mean. And to be completely honest with you, about 2-3 years ago, I didn't know what it was either. Like, what that is? I don't know. None other about no exegesis and eisegesis. So let's examine a little bit. So exegesis and eisegesis in a nutshell are two different methods in which you can determine the meaning of what you're reading in the Bible. So the exegesis is when you take a critical perspective of looking at what the text says in its actual context, right? It means that you're using the text itself to interpret itself. So you're looking at the text and like, okay, what does the text say? And based on what I'm reading here in the text, that's how I'm going to derive the meaning that I'm going to apply to this verse or this chapter or this word or whatever the case may be. Now, eisegesis is the flip side. Eisegesis is a way of interpreting what you read in the text based on what you bring to the table. So you step to the table with your own idea, your own bias, your own beliefs, and then you say, I see what it say right there in the Bible, but the way I see it is this way. And then you base the interpretation of what the text actually means based on what you think it means. So it's vitally important for us to know that when we're studying the Bible here, we're primarily going to start and primarily stay as long as we can with the exegesis, meaning we want to examine the text for itself and see what it is telling us and revealing to us based on what we're reading. Now, I will be honest, there will be times when we will bring some eisegesis into it, where I'll ask you, or I may ask somebody else that we're studying with, what's your opinion? What's your thoughts? What does this verse mean to you? And that's totally fine, as long as we understand that we are now venturing off into each other's ideas, thoughts, and opinions. That makes sense?
Okay, that makes sense.
Fantastic. So the next thing that I want to share, have you ever heard about different layers of the text? Like, does that make any, well, let me ask this. What comes to your mind when you see on the screen layers of the text? What do you think that means in reference to the Bible?
I would say, of course, you can read the text, but there's so many ways that you can peel it. I kind of see the Bible as like an onion.
Right.
And the chapters, like you can read it and just be like, oh, okay, it means this, where it could be something totally different than the word. You bring that out. And like you said, the 3 different languages, you could be like, oh, shoot, that means something else. So, it's just how much you want to peel the text. That's pretty much what I think.
That's great. And you're on point, right? So the layers of the text, like you said, is like peeling an onion. Like we just mentioned, we can turn our Bible. Like, you know how the pastor say, turn to your Bibles. You can tell you, turn your Bible to such and such. When you get there, you'll see what? You'll first see the black and white words that are on that page. And what we're going to talk about now is how we can actually determine the meaning of a text beyond just what it says. You know how they say it's levels to this thing. Well, in this instance, there are layers to the text. So I want to bring out what these different layers are. Now, I want to be completely honest here. Now, like I told y'all, over here at Torah for Life, we're not about trying to convert people to one religion or another. We look at things in a manner in which it allows us to study the Bible and apply it to our lives practically. So that means that if somebody has something valuable, they may not be a Christian, they may be a Jew, they may be Islamic, whatever the case may be. If we can get some gems that allow us to help us understand the Bible and the things that we're talking about, we'll apply it. And in this case, when it comes to the layers of the text, one of the things that I found to be very valuable is something that's a part of the rabbinic Jewish tradition with regards to how they interpret the text. They have 4 different layers that they assign to being able to read and understand what the meaning of the text is. So let's start on the left side of our screen. You see this P, it says Peshat. What this is pretty much the plain black and white text. When you read your Bible, what does it say in black and white? It means that we're not going to go any further than just looking at what that text says just right there in plain black and white. When it say male and female, that's what it say. Like we're not going to go any further than that. It says male, it says female, and that's that. Now, when we take it to the next step where you see the R where it says remes, now this is what I would interpret as, or I would, kind of term as reading between the lines. You familiar with that? Where like you see something or you hear something or you read something, but then you're like, I think there's a little bit more to it.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what that layer of the text is where, we can see that, okay, the text may have said something like this in verse 3, but then when we went down to verse 20, it gave us something else that we can apply to the equation. And based on bringing more than one element of what we just read, we can get a hint to something that may not be explicitly written in the text. That makes sense? Fantastic. So then if we want to get even deeper, there's what's known as the drash. Now, the drash is something that I think we're all familiar with. It's something that if you've ever been to a church or you ever heard somebody bring forth a sermon, then you're familiar with the drash already. Because let me ask you this. Have you ever gone to church or listened to somebody speak and they were giving you some different analogies or illustrations, something that you ain't see in the text, but they took a principle that was in the text and gave you an image that you could apply it and understand it? You ever seen or heard something like that?
Yeah, right. For sure.
So that's what the drash is. It's when you take the text and you put together your own illustration, your own metaphor, and you utilize it as a way of teaching what the text actually says to help people grasp and understand it. And then if you want to get to what many people consider the most deepest level or layer of the text is what's known as soul. This is where you get to the more esoteric, the more spiritual, quote unquote, hidden knowledge behind it. And this is something that, a lot of people are interested in, but I'll be completely honest with you. For the purposes over here at the Torah for Life channel, we're primarily going to stick to those first 3. We're definitely going to look at what the text says in plain black and white. We're also going to look at how we can take certain passages of the scripture, whether they're in the same chapter or in different verses in the Bible in different chapters, and get a hint or an idea of something that may not be explicitly written in the text. And then we'll definitely be utilizing illustrations to show you guys how to apply these principles in your life and your relationships. So with that being said, before I move on to the next slide, did you have any questions about this?
I'm so glad you did a pronunciation of all of those because I would have trashed each and every one, especially drash.
Drash.
Because I was like, yo, Darash.
Darash, baby. Yo, with that cream.
I was like, whoa, what are we talking about? But thank you for your pronunciation. I appreciate that.
No problem. Anything else? Any other thing that stood out or any questions?
Nah, that was the one.
Okay, cool. So this is the very last slide, so for you and everybody else that's tuning in and that'll be studying with us here over at Torah for Life, I just want you guys to know my only requirements for studying. I only got 3 of them. I'll make it easy peasy. So the first one is to respect other people's beliefs and perspectives. That means that you may be watching a video over here, or you may be studying with somebody if you have the opportunity to study with us one day. And people may bring some things that you ain't never heard or that you may not necessarily agree with, or people may be leading the comments. Like, now, Miss B, you know what be happening in the comments, right? People be having all type of beliefs, right?
That part.
That part right there for sure. So all I ask is that you guys be respectful when not only expressing your own thoughts, opinions, and perspectives, but even when responding to other people or tuning in and listening to things that, may be new or foreign to you. And then number two is think objectively. I'm so huge on this because when we think subjectively, we put ourselves in a box. We narrow our way of viewing the world and even worse, the Bible, since that's what we're primarily studying here. But I want you guys to think objectively. That means thinking in a way that you typically would not. That means looking beyond just your own thoughts, your own opinions, and examining the text or whatever it is that we may be studying at the time from somebody else's perspective. And then thirdly, ask questions, right? Because there are going to be things that you may not know when you're studying along with us. And if you don't know anything, leave a comment, ask a question, and we'll happily address it and answer it. And with that being said, are you willing, Miss P, to abide by the requirements? You think that you can rock with those?
I believe I can do that. Yes. Yes.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So that's it. That's all for the slide presentation. Did you have any questions or want me to, clarify anything that I went over?
No, everything was very clear. Thank you.
Fantastic. Cool. So now we're going to get right into it, man. Let's go over to Blue Letter Bible. And for today, like I told y'all, over here, we're all about studying the Bible from a practical perspective and applying it to your life and your relationships. And I truly believe that one of the best places to start when it comes to practical application and being able to understand what we're reading in the Bible is to start in Proverbs. So that's actually where we're going to start our study today, is we're going to go over to Proverbs, and we'll start in chapter 1. Now, we already talked about translations. I'm curious, Ms. P, do you have a specific translation that you would like us to go to? I always like to roll out the red carpet for our guests.
Thank you so much, but I don't.
Okay, cool. So with that being said, I'll go for a translation that I think allows us to stay in the word for word, but I think it'll be clear enough so that anybody who prefers thought for thought will be able to grasp it. And that's the ESV. And like I said, if at any point in time you want us to go to a different translation, just let me know. We can definitely do that without a problem.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Fantastic. So with that being said, let's pull it up on our screen. So the way that we're typically going to do this is we'll read through the entire chapter. Let's see how many verses we got here. Looks like we have a total of 33 verses in this chapter. So what we'll do is we'll exchange. So I'll let you start. So you'll read verse 1, I'll read verse 2, and then we'll just continue to alternate until we get to the end of the chapter. And then we'll take it back from the top and start diving in and looking at it a lot deeper. Cool?
Okay, cool.
Fantastic. So with that being said, I'll let you get us started with verse 1.
Awesome sauce. The beginning of knowledge. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel.
To know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight.
To receive instruction and wise dealing in righteousness, justice, and equity.
To give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth.
Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance.
To understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddles.
The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction.
All right, so let me move it down. All right, let me grab this over here. Bring it down. All right, verse 8. Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching.
For they are a graceful garland for your head and pendants for your neck.
My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent.
If they say, come with us, let us lie in wait for blood. Let us ambush the innocent without reason.
Like Sheol, let us swallow them alive and whole, like those who go down to the pit.
We shall find all precious goods. We shall fill our houses with plunder.
Throw in your lot among us. We will all have one purse.
My son, do not walk in the way with them. Hold back your foot from their paths.
All right, let me move it up. Verse 16. For their feet run to evil, and they make haste to shed blood.
For in vain is a net spread in the sight of any bird.
But these men lie in wait for their own blood. They set an ambush for their own lives.
Such are the ways of everyone who is greedy for unjust gain. It takes away the life of its possessors.
Wisdom cries aloud in the street. In the markets, she raises her voice.
At the head of the noisy streets, she cries out. At the entrance of the city gate, she speaks.
How long, O simple ones, will you love being simple? How long will scoffers delight in their scoffing? All right, let me move it down. Oh, that wasn't even the end of the verse. And fools hate knowledge. That was a long one right there.
If you turn at my reproof, behold, I will pour out my spirit to you. I will make my words known to you.
Because I have called and you refuse to listen, have stretched out my hand and no one has heeded.
Because you have ignored all of my counsel and would have none of my reproof.
I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when terror strikes you.
When terror strikes you like a storm and your calamity comes like a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you.
Then they will call upon me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but will not find me. Let me move it up because this might be a long one too. Okay, it's not a long one.
Okay.
But there we go.
Because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord.
Would have none of my counsel and despised all my reproof.
Therefore, they shall eat the fruit of their way and have their fill of their own devices.
For the simple are killed by their turning away, and the complacency of fools destroys them.
But whoever listens to me will dwell secure and will be at ease without dread of disaster.
All right, there you have it. So we just made it through the first chapter of Proverbs, and I want to take it back up to the top and just kind of start off with your thoughts and your perspectives. You know, was there anything that stood out to you while we were reading through this chapter? Are there any questions that you have?
I don't have any questions, but I do know that from what I got from the chapter, it was basically like, yo, you gotta follow what you know to be right.
Right.
When you be doing the most, that's when you're gonna get the most. And he gonna be looking at you like, really?
Right.
Okay.
Like,
you keep doing that. You okay? So that's what I got from it.
I love it. Yo, it's like, yo, you better get in line. Like God is pretty much like warning you. Like this is the calm before the storm. And, you know, the part that really tripped me out is that verse where he said, like, he gonna laugh at your calamity. Like, yo, peep that out. Like, God, like,
and let you chill in it. He gonna let you relax in that calamity. He like, yo, it's gonna be like a storm, okay? Right. And I'm gonna watch you in that little whirlwind. So you do your thing, okay?
Cool. So one of the first things I think is vitally important for us when we start this study in Proverbs is understanding who the primary author of this book is. So as we see right there in the first verse, that this is the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with King David in the Bible, right? You know, David and Goliath, swinging stones,
right,
killing dad. So this is his son who actually took the throne after he passed away. His name is Solomon.
Okay.
And to kind of give a short synopsis on Solomon, like he's pretty much known for his wisdom, right? So when I think he took the throne really young, like almost like 13, 12 years old or something like that. Like, I don't know how you running kingdoms at 12 and 13, but, you know, do your thing, Buster. Do your thing, man. And thankfully, throughout that process, God blessed him with wisdom because pretty much God came to him in a dream or a vision or, you know, however you want to look at it. And he pretty much asked him, you know, tell me what you want. Like, essentially, God came to him with a blank check. Like, yo, young Solomon, man, what you want? I got it. I'm going to roll it out for you. So I got to ask you this question. If God came to you with that blank check request that he hit Solomon with, like, yo, what you asking him for?
You know what? I would ask him for like, yo, of course, help me with that wealth situation. I appreciate that. But also, I would love to have that ultimate trust and understanding of God and, of course, myself, because I've heard, you know, when you trust yourself more, that's when you're willing to trust others and ultimately God. So, yeah, of course, give me some change. You know what I'm saying? But
you don't want no change. Like, you know what they say, you want the stuff that rustle, not the stuff that dangles, right? Or however that goes.
That fold, you know
right, that fold up.
But give me the fold up. But, you know, I'd appreciate, you know, more trust, you know, within myself and with God so I can trust others and, you know, my judgment. So, yeah.
And I hear that, man, and that's the remarkable thing about Solomon, right? Because I think if we're being honest, the majority of us would ask for some of that paper. And, there would be a few other things that we would throw in the pot as well. But interestingly enough, he requested wisdom to actually lead God's people. And as a result of that, God not only blessed him with that wisdom, and the Bible even refers to him as one of the wisest men to ever live. But in addition to that, he did get the wealth. So like all of that paper that we wanted, like he got that, he became one of the wealthiest men, even though it wasn't something that he requested, because God saw that, hey, you didn't come to me with a demand that, to be honest, I think about 99% of us would have came with. He said, you know what, I'm going to reward you with all of that, even though you didn't ask for it. And Solomon's story is really interesting, but for the purpose of this, I'll just stop right there. So let's dive into these first few verses. So when it says to know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, what does that mean to you? Like, offer
it. Basically more so, of course, I feel as though we always ask for wisdom and, oh my God, God help me to have my path. And at the same time, it's kind of like, yo, you really have to understand these words. Not necessarily, you just don't gain wisdom out of nowhere. I mean, you have to really understand. You have to utilize like all of your senses. You have to be immersed in things. And I think so much, that's why they say old people, oh my God, they're so full of wisdom. It's because they've lived life. They've seen things. So that's the thing. You can't automatically think like, oh my God, I'm gonna have wisdom tomorrow. Like, no, that ain't it. So it's really to understand so much. I don't even think it's just words of insight. I think it's just so much in a whole.
I agree with you completely. And the beautiful thing about this is a rare book, right? Most books that we read, they often don't give us the whole layout of what the whole purpose behind why it's there. And in this case, I'm talking about in the Bible. When you turn to each book of the Bible, it doesn't say, hey, welcome to Genesis. This book is about X, right? Like you just come in and you be like, in the beginning, and you like, oh man, like where's this thing going? Oh, it's some serpents in here. Oh man, we got some giants. Like what's happening? And you're trying to figure out what is this about, right? So that's the wisdom right here of Solomon on display, because he started in this book that he wrote. And he's actually letting us know precisely what its purpose is for. So he goes into it by saying to know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity. So once again, the reason why I wanted to start our study off in Proverbs is because when it comes to practically applying the Bible into our lives and our relationships, that's a form of exercising wisdom. And why not come to a place where we can grasp that right from the onset?
That makes sense.
Let me ask you this. So when we look at this fourth verse, it says to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. I'm curious, what does that mean to you? Like when you read those words?
I would say, of course, knowledge and discretion to youth, because they don't know. And even with quote unquote simple people, sometimes you'd be like, really? Where it's like, yo, fall back a little bit. You don't know everything. Help people, So that's what I look at that verse as. Is like, yo, fall back to the people that don't know. You should not be so. And another thing, it should be more so like, hey, let me show you the way. Let me help you out. Let me give you a little clearance. I mean, I'm not going to justify what you're doing, but I can at least fall back a little bit and say, hey, let me help this person, as opposed to judging.
Right. So it's vitally important for us to receive all of those things that you just stated. And I'm gonna be honest, when I come to this chapter, and I'm keeping those who are watching in mind, right? If I'm reading this would be the first place I feel like in this scripture that I would need to pause and say, what that word mean? And for me, that word is prudence. Now I'm curious, do you know what prudence means?
I don't offhand. I mean, I'm using my context clues, but nah, not offhand.
Right. So that's the beautiful thing, right? Like, I don't like to pretend that I know things that I don't. So what I want to do is actually bring up for us the dictionary, Miriam.
Ah, beautiful.
Mr. Miriam is going to join us for a moment here, and he's going to help us to determine what exactly is prudence. No, Mr. Pop-Up. All right, cool. So let's go in here and check out what prudence is. All right, so let me actually move us off the screen so we can actually see this. All right, so here we go. So it says prudence, the ability to govern and discipline oneself by the use of reason. It also says that we got shrewdness in the management of affairs, skill and good judgment in the use of resources, caution or circumspection as to danger or risk. So now that we have an understanding of this definition, does that open up what we just read for you a little bit more in the text?
Yeah, for sure. Especially when it comes to quote unquote, how they say to the simple. So it can either mean, hey, to give more so of a caution, like, hey, something's coming up. Facts. Look up there. Right. Or either like, hey, make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing over here. So for me, it really means like really giving caution to the simple.
And it's necessary, right? Because think about it. Let's look at that word simple, right? When you think of a simple person, what comes to your mind?
Dang, even when I say quote unquote simple, it seems so harsh. It does. It seems like, oh, you simple person. Right. But I would say,
you're simple-minded, baby.
Simple-minded, like somebody who's just one track. You've heard of that? Like people who got a one-track mind, like they ain't thinking nothing else. And it's like, yo, you got to be a little bit more open to your surroundings. People who just fall into stuff, like that's what simple means to me. Somebody who just falls into things and have no regard for the people around them or what's going on. So free from vanity.
So yeah, you see that? So we got free
lacking knowledge.
Yeah, yes. As we go, lacking in knowledge or expertise, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that definitely speaks to what we just saw in the text, right? Where the person is definitely lacking in those things. Because what is it? The beginning of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So that falls in line. And we need to be able to give prudence to this person who is simple. And then we need to give knowledge and discretion to the youth. And I'm in complete agreement with you. Like the youth is so in need. I know I was.
Oh, me too.
One of the things that I liked as a youth was definitely some of that good stuff called knowledge and discretion.
I was like, discretion, spell that. What?
Right, yeah, so let's bring that up. You bring up a good point, right? So, like I said, we all about making sure we understand what we read in here, right? I think sometimes people just make the assumption that, oh, I totally understand that. Nah, man, break it down for me like I'm a baby. So,
but it's interesting with the word discretion. We hear it so much, but I'm glad that you're bringing up the dictionary because there's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Like you think of just one statement. And that's what you have of that word for so long, where no words are made up of so much. So that's why when somebody might say something and you're like, man, I took it this way. And they're like, I didn't mean it like that. Everybody has a different perception of words and what they mean. So I'm glad that you're bringing it up.
Oh, yeah. It's vitally important. Like studying the Bible, like especially the way we're going to be doing it here at Torah for Life, is we're not coming to the table like we're experts. Right. My whole thing is not dumbing it down. Right. I'm not here to belittle anybody. Right. But I want to be able, when somebody comes to this channel and they tune in, regardless of where you're at or whether you feel like well, I will probably say it may not be for the scholars. Right. You know, we probably would be not at the level that you want. But for the average person that's looking to apply biblical principles in their life, I think that we have to take into consideration that we don't know everything. Or if I'm being honest, I know I don't.
Me neither.
Right. So when we look at these 4 definitions that they have here, which one do you think best aligns with what we've been reading over in Proverbs?
I'm going to say 1 and 3.
Those were the same 2 that caught my eye as well. Right? You know, because
definitely 3.
Yeah, definitely 3, right? Having that ability to make responsible decisions is key. And remember who that discretion was for, the youth.
Right, the youth,
And what do youth often struggle with? I know I did. Making decisions.
Responsibility. Yeah.
yeah. Responsibility and making decisions, right? Like, have you ever met an indecisive teenager? Like, yo, just asking them the simple things like, where do you want to get something to eat? I don't care. It doesn't matter. Wherever you want to go. Like, yo, pick something. What's your favorite place?
Yo, I'm an indecisive adult. Like, it's the same thing for me. Somebody asked me where you want to eat. I'm like, oh, where you want to eat? And it's like, bro, stop this. Right. I gotta work on that.
Hey, you know, baby steps, right? Baby steps.
Is.
But hey, this is the thing. I bet the indecisiveness only probably makes it peaks when you ain't super duper hungry. Because I'm sure if you hangry, I think you can make a decision really quick in your hangriness.
For sure. Or when you're by yourself, it's more easy to say, hey, I want this. But when you're with people, and I'm that type of person, I like making sure everybody gets what they want. I'm like, hey, whatever, I can pick something off the menu. But when I'm by myself, I'm like, oh, I want that, and that.
Facts. That's real talk, man. That is real talk. Now, what was it about this first definition, that stood out to you?
I guess for me, it's more so the power of free decision or latitude of choice without certain legal bounds. Now, that's the thing. Everybody has it's free will here on earth. You do whatever you like. But sometimes the decisions we make or the latitude of those choices, we don't think about the ramifications. We don't think about, hey, we got to listen to this or that's not good. And especially with the youth, they should have choices. Yes. But they should also know, hey, if you make this choice, this might happen. If you do this, this might happen. Or did you even think about that? That might happen too. You can't just do what you want to out here. Now, granted, a lot of people do, but you can't just do what you want out here. And I think in the internet and, streaming, all that stuff that we see, honey, people think that, especially the youth, believe they can do whatever they want to out here and there's no ramifications. Even adults feel the same way.
Yeah. Somebody, grandma, auntie, or mama is like, did you even think? They're like, did you even use the thing between your head?
Exactly. It's true because we just want instant gratification.
Right. That's facts, man. That's facts. So see, little stuff like that, right? Who would have thought that, going to the dictionary can help us to understand the Bible? Like some people really believe that, man, when I study the Bible, I just got to stay there. Like, nah, you can go over to Miriam, you could go to Oxford, you can go to dictionary.com, whatever
anywhere.
Is.
Exactly.
And you can expand on that thing, right?
Right.
So let's get into verse 5. So it says, let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance. So you can kind of see how Solomon is switching gears here, right? Because before he was talking to the simple and the youth, people who they may not get it. But now to people who are actually wise, he has some instructions for them as well. He's telling the wise people to hear and increase in learning. Now, let me ask you this question. Why would you think a wise person needs to hear and increase in learning?
Because I feel like in life sometimes, and I'm just using an analogy of going to school, people think, hey, I'm going to get my master's or whatever, and I'm going to just sit in that. And it's like, no, a teacher. How about that? Yeah. They have to constantly get more certifications. They have to constantly re-up things, have to constantly do stuff. Why? Because you don't know everything.
Nope.
And I feel like in a job, it's the same way. You got to get a certification. You got to re-up on this. You constantly need to learn stuff because if you just sit in what you know, you're not going to grow. You're just going to get complacent. And I feel like that's really what Solomon was saying. Was like, yo, you wise in everything.
Yep.
But somebody else going to come around and know more than you. You need to be able to go, oh, snap, I didn't know that. Okay, got it. We should always be willing to learn and to grow. And when we're not, you're just going to be stifled and then you become simple.
Exactly. And see, you're kind of hitting on one of the main reasons why when God gave me this assignment for Torah for Life and, launching this new ministry and the approach that we're taking, not being rooted or grounded in a particular religion or a particular set of beliefs is because I think it speaks to the point that we're talking about right here. Some people get to a place, and this is no shade, I'm not trying to hurt nobody. I may be stepping on somebody's toes, but I promise you, I ain't trying to step on and smear your Jordans on purpose, right? Like, I'm not trying to do that on purpose or step on your corns. I'm sorry, but I think it bears saying that some people do reach a point where they gain a certain amount of knowledge. And I think I'll call it that. They get a certain amount of knowledge and then they feel like, I don't need to know no more. Like I've arrived, I've made it there. But we see here right in the Bible that it's telling us that not just the simple person, not just the youth, but a person that is wise. And I think that we could both agree, but let me know if you disagree, Tara, that a wise person is somebody that, they know a little something. And in most cases, they know a lot more than the average person. And if that's the case, he's instructing a person that is that learned that, hey, you need to continue to hear and increase in learning. So my question is, how much more so do we need to do the same thing? When we get to a certain point in our relationship with God or in our religion or whatever spiritual journey you walking out on your path, you got to ask yourself, am I still learning? And if you are really honest with yourself and you're like, yo, I'm not, I think the Bible is telling us here that, hey, you need to address that, because even the wise should always be increasing their learning.
Exactly. That was a word for me, because sometimes you feel like, I got that. I mastered that. That's done. And it's like, no, you've never mastered something. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. You're never going to master something. It's always going to be something else you can learn. You can perfect something. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. We're always taught perfection, make it perfect. And it's like, hey, no need. Yeah. Who started that? Like,
now you know the perfectionist out there giving you the side out. Like, girl, what you mean it ain't gotta be perfect?
It's fine. I feel it's like sometimes we're always searching and getting towards perfection that we never start.
Right.
I figured that out with myself. I've had so many projects that have been left unaccomplished because, hey, I wanted to be so perfect that I say, you know what? Never mind. I'm gonna just put that on ice. Right. Where you could at least put it out there and perfected it while it's going, and start learning even more. So yeah, I feel as though we're always trying to become better, but the only way we can is to keep gaining knowledge.
That's real. That's real. And like I said, our approach here at Torah for Life is all about practical. So I think this is a place where we can stop and put something into practice. So when it talks about increasing learning for you, how would you go about doing that in different areas of life? Let's say for career, spiritually, and I don't know, since we talk about relationships here, relationships. How would you increase in your learning in those three areas?
Okay. Career, I would say, well, personally, I'm attaining my master's. So that's definitely, I'm learning. I'm totally learning.
Baby, both of them.
Look, I'm totally learning in that regard.
Right.
What was after career?
The second one is with regards to your spiritual journey.
My spiritual journey, what we're doing right here. Right. That's definitely helpful for me, because I said the top of the year, as I said last year, I want to do better and read the Bible. Didn't even crack the thing open. Okay. I looked at my app a couple times. I looked at my app.
You got to blow the dust off. You think Mary does coming off that mug?
I could write my name in cursive on the cover, okay?
Yo, not in cursive.
Cursive.
That means you going back and it's still dust there, Brody.
Exactly. I did check in and, watch my sermons on YouTube and different things like that. So I was doing it here and there, but not totally ingrained in it. So that's something. Doing this is very helpful for me. Sitting down, turning my phone off and being completely present. That's helpful for me. As far as the relationship portion, I would definitely say being a little bit more, how you said, objective.
Yeah.
As opposed to subjective. That's very helpful with my relationships.
How do you apply that in relationships? I'm curious now. You piqued my interest.
I would say I read this somewhere. This was last year, and it said you have to learn how to give people the grace that you want for yourself. And I said, darn it. But it made sense, because in life so much, if something happens to you or you're at fault or you're running late or whatever, you want people to go, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Where if something happens to the other person, you're like, you late? What's going on? Like, you have to be able to give that person the same grace. Now, it depends on what you're giving grace for. Relax. Right. But I would definitely say I'm working on doing that and being more objective and actually putting myself in other people's shoes and, being more kind and they say you want to be more like God. And I believe that God is very kind. He's very loving. He's very understanding. He's patient. So I believe that I want to be more of those things. But the only way I can is I have to start doing it for myself and doing it in the relationships that I have with people. And that's the only way that I'll get it back in return without wanting anything in return. That's the biggest thing. Yeah. I can't sit around like, I'm going to be kind, so they're going to be kind now. Right. It's like, no, just do it. Anyway.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's real. And you brought up an example that I can definitely relate to. I don't think I did it as consciously as you. But one of the things that has always been a stickler for me is like being on time. Like I was always brought up with like being on time was being early. And like that was really ingrained in me. And I've definitely had instances when it came out to, you know, dating or, you know, meeting up with young ladies or even just meeting up with friends and stuff. And sometimes people don't come on time. And I promise you, like, I'll be honest with you, like, one of the things I struggle with and I'm still improving to this day is how to, you know, deal with frustration, you know, and that was definitely one of the things that kind of hit my button when, like, I'm on time. Where this person at? And then it's like, yo, y'all ain't here on time. Like, yo, where you at, shorty? You know, like, you know what I'm saying? So one of the things that I had to learn over time is what you mentioned, looking at it from the other perspective. Start to consider, well, maybe they ran into traffic, or maybe, you know, they trying to look just right. You know, kind of go back to what we talked about before. Perfect. Maybe she just want to look perfect for me. And, you know, like, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing, right? And it's helped me to give grace, like you mentioned, where now I am always to my best, to as best as I can. I'm always on time. And even when people don't come on time, now I have a lot more grace than I did in the past. So I just wanted to point that out, that I could totally relate to that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next thing we see in that verse is the one who understands obtains guidance. So what's your take on that?
I think it goes back to the wise, you know, needing to increase their learning. It's like, hey, you understand this, but hey, the wise needs counsel too. Like, there's doctors who have mentors. Like, there's people who do all types of amazing things that you think don't even need any type of assistance. They just got it. Where no, you need guidance as well. Everybody needs that. And granted, I'll use a personal reference. I do YouTube videos. A lot of people know that. But
tell them the channel so they can go subscribe.
Oh, Miss PTV 9090. But anyway, we're not here about that. The thing is, I watched so many other people with how to, you know, do better edits and how to, you know, do better blogs. And I've been doing this over 10 years. So it doesn't matter what you do. It's like you always have to have guidance from somewhere. I have mentors. I have people who help me out. Like, even with my advisors for school, they know more than me. Like, I'm trying to get what you got. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like so many times in life, we're trying to act like me, I got it. I don't need any help. You know, there's types of people out there who act like they don't need no help. Okay, I'm sorry if I'm stepping on toes, twinkle toes, but you need help. Everybody needs help. No one man is an island. You need help out here. You just do.
And I mean, I can relate because I used to be that person, you know.
And me too.
I definitely struggle with asking people for help. And it's so ironic. I don't know if this is the case for everybody that fits into that category, but I always like to be the person that helps other people. To me, I find that so ironic. How am I available to help other people? But like, when I'm in need, I'm good. I got it. But I really don't, though. Like, I really
I got
it. Right. But I don't, man. And it's like, I need to get my whole life together right now. And I need some help. You know, people be like, help me, Jesus. And he like, did you call Carl and Anthony and Derek?
You like, who?
And Barbara? Like, oh, you mean my brother, my sister, my cousin, and my auntie? Nah, they humans. Well, yeah, they can help you, baby.
Exactly. Oh, no, baby. What is you doing?
Right.
It's true. Like, you have so many outlets. But a lot of times you want to be sitting and saying, I'm fine. Right. Nothing's wrong with me.
Not me.
I'm okay. Not me. And it's like, nah, bro.
American Dad voice, yo. I see you. That's all like the American Dad.
It's true. We always sitting out here like we got it all together. And we out here shaking and like, help me. And it's like, nah, we got to do better. And I did say in 2021, I was going to do better. 2020, I asked for help a lot. Shocking.
Right. That's
shocking because I don't do that. But it's freeing. Right. It's very freeing to ask for help. It's freeing to say, I don't know. It's freeing to say, hey, give me some advice.
Right.
It's freeing. And I'm going to do a lot more of it.
Right. Yeah. It's so important for us to ask for help, man, because when we don't, we set ourselves up for failure because, and here's the thing. Something that a lot of people don't like to do, which is prolong the suffering. Like sometimes we're prolonging our suffering and we're talking about I'm waiting on God. But God is like, yo, why haven't you picked up the phone? Why haven't you sent that email? Why haven't you reached out in text? Like
that part.
I get it, right? We do want to include God in it, but that does not mean ignoring what we can do practically. And like I said, that's what we do over here. We're about the practical and the spiritual and bridging the gap between the two of them, right? Because I think far too many people want to treat spirituality as an island. And then you got people that want to treat practicality as an island. Well, we're here to provide the bridge, right? You know, you're practical. Come on over here and get a little spiritual stuff in you. You're spiritual. Come over here and get a little of this practical and let's meet in the middle and live amazing lives.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I got to be honest with you. When I read this verse right here, like, you know, Solomon is like coming for our whole life, right? Like,
the jugular.
It don't seem like it, but like he's coming for our own life because essentially what verse 5 is saying is that you ain't perfect. You ain't got it all together. You need some help. Oh, you think you the smartest on the block? You think you the baddest baddie? Nah.
Exactly.
Nah. So it's vitally important for us to recognize that right here in the Bible is telling us that no matter how wise you get, no matter if you do graduate from being somebody that is just a collector of knowledge to one who has understanding, you too need some guidance.
That part. Exactly. That's the truth.
So then we move down to 6. It says to understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddles, right? So as we know, I think many people will probably say the Bible seems like it's full of those, right? It's full of proverbs, sayings, words, and riddles that I'm trying to figure out what the heck it say. I'm curious. Have you ever picked up your Bible, read something and was like, say that again?
Oh, for sure. That's why I closed it half the time. I was like, you know what? This is a little too rich for me. Right. I'll come back there a little later. And sometimes it's intimidating. It can be.
It definitely can be intimidating for sure. Like I know for me, I've definitely come to those places where like, oh, I don't understand it. And like you, I would just put it down and be like, oh, well. Or like we were talking about before, like when we were going through the slides and we were talking about how we study the Bible when I talked about exegesis and eisegesis, or people just rely on eisegesis. They're like, I don't even care what the text meant there because it seems like bibble babble. And I think I was just giving my own meaning. And then, you know, when they get somewhere and somebody break down what it means, they're like, no, that's not what it means. Because according to me, this is what it means.
Exactly.
So it's like, yo, where did you get that from, though?
Right.
Yeah. So then in verse 7, it tells us, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction.
Ooh.
Now, when you hear that, what comes to your mind?
I think out of all the verses that we've read thus far, 5 and 7 have been the most like, but 7 really like says, ta-da, be a fool if you want to, because you're going to despise all of this stuff we're going to be talking about, okay? And you should automatically be able to point out a quote unquote fool because they go against everything that we get ready to talk about. And of course, fearing God is the beginning of having, I would say, a fruitful life. But of course, that comes in spurts. I can say that for myself. I mean, there's been times where I have been on a right path and doing exactly what I know I need to be doing. And I've been blessed. And I feel like we're all blessed, even to just breathe on our own. But at the same time, I'm just saying, when I went off and leaned on my own understanding, and I was destructive. Yeah, so that's how I really looked at verse 7 for sure.
I like that, you know, and one of the things that I want to do since we made it to this verse, I want to take the time to introduce context, right? So something that we'll definitely be diving into in this channel is context, which means studying scripture to determine what it means, utilizing the things that surround it. So when we talk about context of a biblical scripture or a verse, in this case, verse 7, in order to get the context of that verse, we needed to read what was before it and what comes after it in order to truly grasp it. So in this case, when you think about all the things that we've been talking about, right? Wisdom, instruction, knowledge, understanding, all of those amazing things, I want to now put that word knowledge into context because I can only imagine that if somebody stumbled across this channel and they may not have the best relationship with God, or they're skeptical about him, they may be like, I ain't got to fear God to get knowledge. You know what I'm saying? Like, I went to the university, I went to the library, I went to Google. So like, I know I got the knowledge, right? So what I want to be clear about is when we talk about knowledge in the context of reading right now in Proverbs 1, he's talking about knowledge of how to apply the Bible, the things that are in the Bible. It's not talking about knowledge from a general sense of knowledge that you gain in the world, that you gain for your career, your education, but it's talking about when you pick up this book of the Bible, these things, when you want to gain knowledge in this area of your life, the first thing that you're going to have is the fear of God. And I'm curious, why do you think it's a requirement for us to have the fear of God in order for us to even reach the beginning of knowledge?
I feel like that's the only way for us to be receptive.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm not fearing God, whatever he's trying to tell me, whatever he's trying to lead me to, even when I feel like the Holy Spirit is trying to guide me somewhere, I'm gonna be like, nah, I don't see that. Y'all see where? No, I feel like I personally cannot be receptive if I don't fear God. I can't see certain things. I can't despise, you know how they say fools despise wisdom and instruction. Yes. If I'm getting wisdom, any type of instruction, if I don't fear God, I'm able to go, nah, that ain't it. I'm gonna just do me. So I feel like I cannot personally be receptive if I don't fear God.
I totally can understand that. Yo, and that's real. I'm in complete agreement with you. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to examine some of the words that we have here, right? I think the key word is fear, right? Now, I think most people, when they hear that word, they think about, scary movie, like being afraid or something, right?
Right, yeah.
I think it's important for people to understand that there's a different way that this term is used when we're talking about studying the Bible. So what I want to do really quickly is go to that interlinear. Remember when I was telling you about the interlinear Bible before, where I said it actually will align the English word with the Hebrew word so that we can compare the two? So that's what we're looking at right here on the screen. And the first word just happens to be fear. So this is what that word looks like in the Hebrew. And this is clearly the word that we see in English, which is fear. Now, something that I'm going to take us a little bit deeper. So now we're going to dive into a deeper study of this word fear. And one of the things that we can use to do this is what's known as a lexicon. So you know what a dictionary is, right? When we want to know the meaning of a word, we typically go to a dictionary, right?
Right.
So a lexicon is essentially, for lack of a better term, it's like a dictionary for words that we find throughout the Bible. It allows us to get a better understanding of what those words mean. So one of those lexicons is known as the Strong's lexicon. So it has a Strong's quote unquote number for every single word that you find in Hebrew or even in Greek when you're in the New Testament. So what we're about to do right now is take a look at what this Strong's lexicon has as a definition for the word in Hebrew that is translated as fear in English. Make sense? All right, fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and click this. And now you see it brings us to a new page. And we get some outlines of how this term is used in the Bible. So we see, like I mentioned, fear, terror, which is what most people would typically equate to fear. We also see awesome or terrifying thing. We also see fear of God. And what does this say with regards to the fear of God?
Respect, reverence, piety.
Right. So when we apply that word to God, it's not talking about being afraid of him or him terrorizing us and demanding us to do something, but it's about understanding that we need to respect and revere him. So with that in mind, now we can go back to our original verse and look at this thing in context where it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Let me ask you this question. If you were seeking some guidance, some information, some knowledge, some wisdom, would you go to a person that you know has failed in that area of their life over and over and over and over again?
I'd say yes and no.
Okay.
Because I feel like we can always learn something from people, no matter what. So I technically wouldn't be so like, what? You failed 50 times. Like, I can learn. Okay, you went that way and that didn't work. Thank you so much. Let me write that down. Like, there's ways I could pull out things that are wisdom that I can run with. Because, hey, if you've tried something a zillion times and it didn't work, I guarantee you, a zillion and one, you might knock it out of the park. Who are me to judge? Right. I don't know that. I'm not sure. Now, granted, of course, I would go to this main successful person and be like, yo, I see you. You've done this. Let's get it. But then I would also go to somebody else who, hey, you might not have everything that I'm looking for, but hey, you've actually done the work, especially if I haven't done anything at all.
Right. And you are very sharp. You're very sharp because what you said, whether you realize it or not, it's a very powerful principle. There's this statement amongst the Jewish traditions where they ask the question, who is a wise person? And the answer to that question is one who is able to learn from everyone. And you said that, and I'm sure you probably didn't even have no knowledge of that tradition or its existence.
Yeah, I didn't.
It just goes to show you how God will drop some wisdom on you. And like, that's some ancient wisdom right there. You just drop some old sage advice. You know what I'm saying? It's vitally important for us to recognize that. So I think I need to rephrase my question to kind of get to the point that I wanted to go with. But nah, you were definitely on point and you were right. As soon as you said that, I was like, oh, she's sharp. She caught that. Because you can learn from any and everybody if you're willing.
But I see where you're going. I see where you're going with it. And for the sake of your question and not me going so super deep, of course, I'm not going to go to the one who's going to be like, I did it a zillion times. No, you're right. But for me personally, how I handle things, I'll still listen. But, you know, for the majority, yes, we're not going to go with that person. We'll go to the, you know, one who's been knocking it out the park. But yeah, I see what you mean though.
Yeah. So essentially like a better way for me to frame that question is like, would they be the first person you call to get insight on that topic?
No.
It would typically be somebody who would you typically call first?
Personally, I would call somebody who I would say, quote unquote, is successful in my eyes with whatever they're doing, or who has the most wisdom in that department, who has been, quote unquote, successful in what they have going on with what I need.
And I got this must be God. I just got a new example that I think can really open this thing up, right? Let's shift to a different area, right? Let's talk about health, right? And something that I think we all can relate to in these times, right? So when you think about your health, if you start to notice that something isn't right with you, would you go to the person, and this is no shade, I got to say it over, this is no shade. Would you go to the person working in that McDonald's takeout line, that drive-through line? Would you say, hey, you know, like, I got this ailment and I need some help? Or would that be the first
Absolutely person? Not. Look, absolutely not. No.
And why is that?
Their choices ain't no better than mine. Like, no. You get that 4 for 4. Wait, that's at Wendy's, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that 4 for 4, baby.
You getting the 4 for 4. Like, I can't ask you no questions. Like, that ain't it. No, thank you.
Right. So what's one of the main reasons why you would go to either your own personal doctor or go to the emergency room and, you know, trust the guidance of any professional that's working there at that time? What is it about their advice that you will receive?
The knowledge that they have.
Right.
The knowledge that they have, and they know exactly, hey, I've seen this before. This is what's going on. 9 times out of 10, when you go to the ER, I mean, you got to be an extemporaneous person for them to go, whoa, we don't know. But they at least gonna try. They're not gonna worry you. They're just gonna say, we're gonna run a few more tests. If you ever hear that, they tried to figure out what is going on. But at least you're in the right place. Now, granted, like you said, you wouldn't go to Home Depot or Lowe's and say, you know, my foot, it's been acting up. They're gonna be like, I don't know. I'm not sure. But you're right. You would go to the person who you know can help you.
Facts. And here, I'm about to bring this all together. So all of this ties into the word fear, right? So the reason why you're going to go to the professional, the medical professional, is it safe to say because you respect and you revere what they're going to bring to the table in this certain situation, as opposed to what would be brought to the table by the person that works at a fast food line?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So when we think about what we were just talking about, the knowledge that we're talking about is the knowledge of the things related to the Bible. That's what Solomon is addressing. And when it comes to gaining an understanding of the things in the Bible, don't you think that God will be a good source to go to?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right. So when it talks about revering, respecting, or fearing God, and that being the beginning of knowledge, it kind of goes back to what you were talking about before. We have to go to him first because we respect, we revere, and we honor what he's going to reveal to us in his word. So
exactly.
I just wanted to unpack that, right? Because I know there are misconceptions that fly around about that word fear. And I just wanted to address it and let people know, hey, there's a distinction between terror and honor or, reverence and things of that nature. And the reason why God is going to be referred to as being the beginning of knowledge, having that fear of him is because we're going to him because we respect what he will reveal to us. And in this regard, what this text that has been inspired, passed down, the people who wrote it, who had an understanding or relationship with God, what they're conveying to us is something that could help us in our lives.
Exactly, for sure.